Welcome to the Business Trendsetter podcast. We teach you all about trends and how to use them to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
And I'm Adam Hartung.
We're Spark Partners. To learn about how to grow your business, please go to our website at sparkpartners.com. Take a look at our courses, our Think Innovation Masterclass, as well as our Unlock Growth course. We're here today talking about we're the last week in 2021. And there's a lot of things happening right now in the markets in the world. And one of those things that is always the center of our conversations is the conversation around trends. And so we oftentimes have to sift through the fads, through the short-term blips on the radar here. And so we want to talk about one of our favorite companies, and that is, of course, Apple. A lot of companies right now are looking at, and news organizations are talking about what's happening in 2022. And in our opinion, a lot of that is very myopic, very short-sighted. And so we want to reference an article, and I want to kind of pitch this to you, Adam, here regarding an article that came out in Tech Times I think it was last week, regarding some of what the folks at Apple are looking at for the not only the short term, but the long term. And those are three main things. Let me list them, and then I'm going to punt it to you, Adam. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and autonomy. Take it away.
Well, we say those three things, and I think all of our listeners will respond that they're hearing those words a lot. At the same time, they'll respond with, I don't know what that means for me. And that's what I think is very unfortunate. As you know, this morning we were both looking at an article that was written by a consultant to small, medium-sized businesses, and it was, what to do in 2022. And it went on for, a dozen pages or more. And everything in the article was talking about, effectively, this is what the world looks like to me today. Omicron, Federal Reserve, inflation, President Biden's popularity, all these little bits. And then saying, what's the next dot on the line? You failed to take and look backward for what's been happening for, say, 6, 8, 10 years, and then look forward where we're likely to be in 6, 8, 10 years, and then say, now, how is that going to change things? And that's the way most people view it, and small and medium-sized companies will often view it that way. This is what's happening now, and I'm thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow without putting everything in that context, because that's what makes a huge difference. I had a meeting a week ago with some experts on the auto industry, literally with the association for the auto industry. And they were talking about the future of electric cars. And they had sent me in advance quite a bit of data. And what they said was it's impossible to get to half of the new retail fleet of cars being electric vehicles by 2030. And they had a bunch of charts to scale it out. I took this data they gave me, and then I proceeded to feed it back to them, showing them how I thought it was a LeBron slam dunk that you could get to the 50% number by 2030. And they were held up because of exactly what I just said. They were held up by looking at where we've been the last 2 years, and then they start looking at how big a change it is to be there in the next 8 years. And they said, that's just unlikely or impossible to happen. So let's apply some different ways of thinking about this, and we'll just dial it back. And one thing that really bothered them was that the sales of EVs was this asymptotic curve. Instead of just going like a linear curve that we're used to seeing, it looks flat and then jacks up really fast. And I said, that's a problem in terms of how you make graphs. Any of us that work with high growth rate companies, anything over 10, 12%, know that you have to plot it out on a log scale because it all gets asymptotic very quick at those growth rates. You've been working in the auto industry, which is at very low growth rates. You're not used to high growth rates. You're using linear scales, and it's the wrong way to look at it. But they were tied up in this what happened, now. And I think what we really should be looking at what's happening in 2021 and what people are talking about 2022 from where you and I were back at the beginning of the pandemic, at the very beginning of 2020. Back when we wrote what's going to affect people in 2022. We wrote that, the white paper that's available on our website. And in that, we talked about the four big trends of artificial intelligence and the gig economy, mobile and asynchronous work. That is still in place. And that's what I think we need to realize is don't look at these little dots like Omicron. What we said was, look, people are going to work from home more. There's going to be more people shifting out of regular work for gig work. there's going to be more of a need to allow people to work asynchronously rather than trying to get them into rooms. And so we said that's the direction. We didn't say it was just going to be the direction for 1 year. We said that's going to be the direction for a decade. So we go into 2020, these horrible things that everybody's talking about. We had all the big shutdown. We had the problems. Well, then things got a little bit better. And what shocked me were how a huge percentage of the population thought, oh, we're just going to go back to working in offices again. We're going to go back to eating in restaurants the way we always did. We're going to go back to doing things the way we have. When we'd already laid out that wasn't going to happen. That what was occurring in 2020 was the culmination of a decade of trends that had gotten to 2020, and they were going to continue for another decade. So if you had been reading our stuff and listening to our podcast, you would have known that we were going to end up in a world in which the Great Resignation was going to happen. That's what we said about the gig economy, right? That it's going to be these work people aren't going to come back to work. People aren't going to want to go back into offices. Work from home is very real. It's going to continue to be that way. People won't be content to be drug around, micromanaged in meetings all day long. They're going to want to get their work done, work asynchronously, be as productive as they possibly can, and get it done on the road, be mobile while they're at it. Those trends are still in place, and they're going to continue for the next 8 years. And what we need to do is think, is your business taking advantage of those things, right? Is your business out there saying, hey, look, this mask wearing is very likely to last for a decade. I've been traveling the world for a long time, and I can tell you for the last 8-9 years, anytime I traveled through Asia, if I'm going through Hong Kong, Tokyo, any major airport in Asia, the Asian population is wearing a mask, right? They're wearing a mask outdoors, they're wearing a mask in stores, they're wearing a mask when they go through airports. They were already aware of the fact that contagious diseases were something to be avoided. And so that part of the world was already wearing masks. In America, we hadn't started. But I remember talking to some people and saying, I think I'm going to start doing that before the pandemic ever hit. We started saying, I don't really want to get the flu. I don't want to get colds. Why don't I just start doing what these other people do and wearing a mask?
Yeah.
And now that's what I'm driving home, is that these things that we switched towards in 2020 and early 2021, if you thought you were going to abandon those work methods, if you thought you were going to abandon those workplace trends, well, you need to think again, because that was the trend we're on and the trend where we will continue to go. I mean, isn't that the way it looks from where you sit managing your businesses, Manny?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded of one thing. So what makes our economy the highest growth, with the exception of a couple others in a long time, and the biggest economy, is what also makes us weak, and that is a lot of our pride, a lot of our hard work, and one of the things that we struggle with is this pride thing. Remember when, and I barely remember when, seatbelts were not required to be worn on the road. I remember being as a kid, my grandmother driving up to Tucson, and we were in the back of her station wagon, and we were just hopping all the seats back and forth. The kids were. We didn't have seatbelts, and then they made it the law, and everybody was grumbling, and all these tough guys were not wearing their seatbelts. So of course, fast forward 30 years, now everybody's wearing seatbelts, and it's not a big thing anymore. Well, the mask mandate will probably be the same thing, and depending on where you stand politically, you're going to have your own opinion. But I'm also reminded of a great book that I read by a guy named Alfred Lansing called Endurance. Have you read that book, Adam?
I have not. Enlighten me.
Yeah, so it was basically written about the failed voyage of Shackleton, Sir Ernest Shackleton, back in the turn of last century in Antarctica. And so the interesting thing about that book is that they basically get stuck in the ice, and they have to really survive a long time in the ice. And so this idea of short-term versus long-term. So Shackleton had the vision, the true leadership of looking beyond the day-to-day, and how are we going to get off of this block of ice? How are we going to survive? We've got this winter coming in. We've got the summer, and I mean, all these things are playing out. But the day-to-day stuff was all consuming. The hunger, the cold, and don't get me wrong, those are important. But if you really want to get out of the ice, if you really want to break free, and in your business, you have to look beyond the short term. You've got to look beyond COVID. You have to look beyond these things and think about what's happening in the world, right? I mean, it's the long-term vision of Apple describing autonomy and AI, and I mean that's where people should be looking. How can you align your business to those trends?
Yeah, I back in 2018, 2019. I had a client that was a window manufacturer. Now, everybody's familiar with these giant window manufacturers that you see on television, Anderson and Pol. Anyway,
Pella.
yes, that's it. But there's also literally hundreds of window and door manufacturers that work at a much more local level, a lot of times trying to appeal to local tastes. And this fellow had started a company about 20 years before, and he was making windows, predominantly windows rather than doors, in the Philadelphia area. And he really wanted to grow his business. And he had struggled, and he tried a couple of markets and had struggled. And I did some research with him, and I went back and said, listen, the big demographic in our country is the aging population, right? We are not increasing the size of the population other than immigration. Got a lot of people choosing not to have babies, people only having one baby. So the only reason we're getting any population growth is it's happening from immigration. That's a debatable subject, how fast it's going to grow. If you really want to grow your business, you can't depend on babies and Philadelphia to get bigger. So what's this demographic doing? Well, we're seeing a shift of retirees that move to warmer locations, right? They go west and they go south. And if you want to grow your business, what you need to do is just get as smart as saying, what are the 10 highest growth markets that I could get into? Some of them are huge, like LA, tough business, it's going to be hard to get there, going up against a lot of competition. Others, like Tucson, might be just the perfect place that you would land, start up a new business, get committed to it. And then what happens is you're back in the river again because Tucson's got a fast-growing population. Maybe you go to Phoenix, maybe you go up towards Las Vegas. Again, areas that have fast-growing populations, influx of people. So what I'm getting at here is here's a big trend, demographics. And he wasn't applying it to his small business, making windows. He was so stuck in thinking about the market he was in. Now, it's true that you don't have the same kind of a window in a Tucson that you have in Philadelphia. They're much more concerned about the winter, cold, snow, keeping the cold out. How do you keep the water out, the rains? I mean, these are the big issues in Philadelphia. They're certainly not the same issues if you're in a southwestern location. But that doesn't mean you can't develop the right product for that marketplace and learn how to be competitive, learn what the customers want, give them what they need. So that's the use of these trends. You can apply these things, absolutely apply these things to the market today. And so the two big ones that we keep talking about are obviously demographics, and the other one's the environment, the impact of the environment. People want green processes, they want green products. They're looking to do more with electrical power rather than doing it with fossil fuels. So you start thinking to yourself, okay, what are you doing out there? Can you help green? Packaging. Could you improve your packaging? I came across a company recently that had figured out how to take vast quantities of paper, mostly cardboard, and they shred it up and they treat it, and they can use it like you would use potting soil. And it actually has improved properties over potting soil in that it lasts longer. It also doesn't require peat, which has to be mined out of Canada and imported to the United States. It's just very, very green, and it works really, really well. And they're getting ready to take this product into the market. And they asked my opinion, and I looked at all the factors they were dealing with, and said, this is going to be successful, even if it's a little bit more expensive right now. The issue is that once you give consumers a choice to go between a green product, which you've got recycled cardboard here, and you have benefits to the recycled cardboard, and they can choose that versus the other product, which is your traditional peat-based potting soil, I think you're going to see people make that decision real quickly, right? And so this is what I'm trying to say is that these are the ideas for new businesses that build on these trends. And they're the ideas, these trends, you can apply these to your business to start saying, can I do something new rather than doing what I've always done?
That right there, Adam, is, I think, the keystone that a lot of people forget to implement. They have a business and they are making okay money. They have very, very small growth. And they're fearful of the future, but they're more fearful of acting on something rather than the future itself. So that's why they start to go downhill, right? You've got an ongoing concern. You have a business. You see your sales start to sort of soften, and then you've got these ideas, and people are bringing you ideas, and you don't act. You don't act because you're fearful of what might actually happen, right?
You might remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just to sort of close this up is that they're fearful because they don't have the right data to support their new direction. They don't really know. They don't know what they don't know here, right? They are lost.
So, Manny, you might remember in 2021, I introduced you briefly to a piece of pro bono work I did for a company, and they introduced themselves to me by saying they did, I think it was blow molded plastics. And I was kind of like, why? I mean, that's not a business. That's a value delivery system. You're making something. Well, they made blow molded plastics for RVs. And the interesting thing was, it turns out there were just at the top two kinds of customers. There were people who went to their website and bought parts for their RVs, replacement parts. Then the second kind of customer were people that had shops out in the world, and they would buy, somebody bring the RV in, and they needed the part, and the shop would buy the part to install it. Call it a repair shop, for lack of something better. And those two groups had very, very, very different needs. The people that do-it-yourself home guy that wanted to part, he's wanting to part fast. He wants to get his RV back on the road. The guy who's got a shop, he's got to resell that part. So, he not only needs it fast, what are the terms? Am I going to get paid before I have to pay you, or do I have to pay you for the part before my customer pays me? Do you have a published price so that I'm stuck? I have to pay you've got it on your website at 100. I can't sell it for more than 100. So are you selling it to me at a discount so that I can make a couple of bucks on this part when I pass it through? And so they had very, very different needs, and they had never thought about that. They never sat down and really driven through what were the needs of the end-use customer that bought off the website versus the repair shop that was buying off of the website. And just, they didn't really hadn't looked into that. But if they did, they'd start realizing those needs were very different, right? And that if they started to focus on those needs, and get out of just making parts every day, it would increase their opportunity, right? And hopefully that opened up some eyes for them, and that made some improvements in their business. Like I said, it was a piece of pro bono work that we did. So this is what hopefully people will start to do as we go next year. And this is why it's important to listen to an Apple. Because I want to say that the small, medium-sized business, they don't have the time to do what I do or what you do, Manny. We sit down and we think about the future, and we think about these implications of what's happening with the coronavirus. We think about what's happening, with all these big issues. And we say, how does that fit today in the context of the long-term trends? And so we got time to do it. You don't. So one thing you can do is look at what are the big corporations? What are the leading corporations talking about? If Apple says, hey, we're really focused on artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and autonomy, then it's a good idea to follow that lead. They know what they're doing. They have the resources to have the people looking at it. And so you start saying, okay, let's just take artificial intelligence. What are you doing to make your product smarter? Or to make your business model smarter? Do you know your customers? Like I mentioned, if you've got customers that are repair shops, you could probably figure out how to make a website that's super easy for a repair shop to come online, get their parts, get a discount, get it delivered, handle terms, all the things you'd want to do. And then as that shop bought more and more parts, are you keeping track of it? Are you getting the data? Are you looking so that you know that, oh, hey, this particular person focuses on the Winnebago brand of RV. Another guy focuses on the Coachman brand of RVs, right? And you start to be able to go back to them with, hey, this is what's happening in terms of the OEM parts from each manufacturer. That's artificial intelligence. That's just like Amazon. It's getting smarter about your customers' need and letting the data drive it. And it becomes, we can help you out. And if you build it into your website, you have autonomy. Now what happens is you don't have to put Fred or Hazel in the middle of the thing to figure it out. In fact, the website becomes smart. And so it has an autonomous process to reach out to people. People get stuck thinking about autonomy just with autonomous cars, which is a cool application of autonomy. But what we're really looking at is autonomous processes. How can I, get a process to work without human intervention in the middle of it? So again, it all goes back, know your customers, start thinking about their needs and say, well, hey, what kind of artificial intelligence could I put in here so that, I could ask a few questions and maybe direct the customer off to what they want much more quickly. And then if you make it happen automatically, you're on the autonomous route, right?
Right.
And that's where it's not there. All the small and medium-sized businesses out there can do this. All of them can do this.
It's not a mystery.
No.
And one thing, Adam, that we're going to do here for the rest of the year and into January, for the next 30 days, we want to do for all of our listeners and viewers of this podcast, and certainly anybody that that runs a small or medium-sized business, we're going to offer our masterclass at a $500 reduced rate. So our masterclass is usually $997. We're going to give it to you all for $497 as a way to really get you thinking about the future, and aligning your business with these trends, really getting out of your own head and thinking like an innovator. So our masterclass is called Think Innovation. So we're going to be offering this to you. Send me an email. I'll give you the promo code, Manny@sparkpartners.com, and we'll get things moving on that. But really, if you think about these businesses, it's not a giant mystery of what it takes to really remain relevant over the long term. I see businesses all the time that are struggling. And, this whole thing happens. It's a little like this downward spiral happens. Sales are flattening. So everybody blames the salespeople. And then the salespeople are saying, well, you're not getting my message out. So they blame marketing. And then marketing blames customer service. And customer service says, well, these damn customers, and they blame the customer. And this downward spiral, and of course, leadership is just holding their head saying, I don't know what's happening. But in all actuality, the dirty secret of sales, as I've said this till I'm blue in the face, if nobody wants to buy your product, you're not going to sell. It's as simple as that. People get this this haze around them regarding their product or service. Oh, why aren't people buying my product or service? Why aren't they buying this widget? It's so amazing. Look at this cool widget, Adam. Everybody wants to buy this. And, I ended up buying one because I wanted one, but not everybody's going to want this. And if they're blue in the face, they're going to get angry at their distributors or their salespeople, but they don't really realize what are the trends that are really the waters here in this back to the Shackleton example. What is it going to take for me to become unstuck? And that kind of dovetails to our second course called Unlock Growth. So there are certain things in your business that prevent you from growing. They lock you in. And this is kind of the hook, Adam, that got me really, really involved with you a couple of years ago is, when you talked about lock-in, I kind of pushed back mentally initially as, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. But the more I let it marinate, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. So why don't you give the viewers and listeners here a really overarching view of what lock-in is, and we'll talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, the status quo is comfortable because we repeat it day after day. And therefore, we like to continue to do what we've done. We like to get better at doing what we've done. What we don't think about is the fact that as we do that every day, we're choosing not to follow other options. We're not devoting our time or our resources into something new. It's that I'm busy enough taking care of business as it is without trying to have something new to worry about. And what you do is that causes you to be biased towards doing what you've always done, and you lock it in. If you had to get up and make every decision fresh every day, you'd never get anything done. You'd make thousands of decisions. What clothes am I going to put on? What am I going to eat for lunch? There's a lot of decisions that you don't want to put much energy into. And so you start qualifying those in your business as well. And you start figuring out ways that, hey, I don't make this decision. I've made it once. Now the process just works along, and that process effectively operates without any decision making. And that's lock-in. You lock in the process. You lock in people in their jobs. Tell them what to do. You don't want them to do anything more than what they do. You're not really looking for any creativity in the job. You just want execution in the job. That's lock-in. We put people up as guardrails on our business. We say, hey, if you feel like I'm trying to steer the bus towards the edge of the road, pull me back. And we create these Dr. No's in our organization that just say no, no, no to anything new. And then we often thank them for that, saying, oh, you know what? I really didn't know anything about that business over there. It's probably a good thing that you stopped me before I made any investments in it, right? And so we fill our organization with these mechanisms to lock in doing what we've always done and keep us very comfortable. And the course that you're talking about, we put together recently, is about helping people identify how you've intentionally created these lock-ins, how you've simplified your life, simplified your business, made it more manageable, often thought of it as a best practice exercise. But now what it's done is it's gotten you to where you have these serious blinders. It's locked you into the past and makes it really difficult for you to change. So even if you said, hey, look, Adam, I understand what you're saying. I'd like to apply some artificial intelligence, but, where would I do it? How would I get the resources? Who in my organization is going to tell me to quit? All these kinds of questions. This course will help you work your way through that, identify those lock-ins, and then attack them so that you can get over those hurdles and get around to doing the stuff you need to do.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a gentleman who used to run a $100 million business. And we were talking about this exact thing, and what the light bulb went off when he realized. And so behind me here, I've got many bookshelves in my office in my home, and they're filled with all kinds of books, sales books, and all my engineering books, but there's also a lot of books to do with lean manufacturing and some of these things we talk about as best practices that are inherently not bad for the business. But what is bad for the business is when you're looking at going in the new direction and following these trends, and those things lock you in. So the light went off for him when he realized that the business that he had grown from, I think he joined, they were about $15 million company. By the time he left, they were over about $120 million. And then when he left, the new leadership took all of the creative aspects that were, that they were implementing in their business, and they cut them all back. They locked in, talk about pouring concrete. They poured concrete, and then they melted lead on top of that. And this year, so he exited the company about a year and a half ago. This year, that same company is going to be doing $55 million. So from 120 when he left 18 months ago to 55. And they're in a business that is essentially pandemic proof. I won't go into the details because he's a friend of mine, but it was a kind of a revelation. And it's upsetting, right? If you're the leader of a company and you take your company to the height, the apex, and then you leave and everything that you've done was mothballed or killed or, buried into a tomb and poured concrete on, it's not a fun thing.
Right. So with the last bit of this, I really do encourage those listeners out there to take advantage of this discount on our masterclass. We've been selling it for just under $1,000. But for those of you that are going to do some work between Christmas and New Year's, we've got one of these years where they both land on a Saturday. So you've got a solid week of Monday through Friday between them. We're offering this discount. Just send out again, reach out to Manny at sparkpartners.com, get the code. We'll get the product for you. We'll get it so you can download and you can start planning for your future. Because I think the last bit was this augmented reality. And if you listen around, you've got Apple talking about augmented reality. You've got Facebook Meta talking about augmented reality. You've got Google talking about augmented reality. Think about where we've been in terms of work from home, how we've gone to using technologies like Zoom, and think about, okay, where are we headed? It's kind of obvious that in fact we're going to get to a point where we're going to use additional enhanced tools. And this is where augmented reality comes in, allowing me to get a better handle on a product or a project or somebody that I'm working with by using these enhanced tools. Again, they might seem kind of goofy today, but if you look at where gaming is going and you look at the consoles and you look at the tools that gamers use, it's really obvious this is where it's headed. And if you're an early adopter in this, or say you've got a complicated project, you're a project management company and you've got complicated projects and you need people to be able to look at, large pieces of data, or we used to put, walls of process flows, augmented reality will let you do that with everybody sitting in a different state or even a different country. If you're doing product development, if you're doing any kind of sale where the customer wants to experience being involved, like, they want to experience being in a home or experience being in a particular location, or experience on an airplane or experience in a vehicle. These augmented reality is going to be a part of what we're going to do, and it'll tie into, our processes, our autonomous processes. We'll say, hey, come in, put on the augmented reality goggles and other tools used for augmented reality, and let it, and then we'll take you through a process that will help you be a happy customer at the end. But this project, this tool set that we have, the 28 modules in the masterclass, can help you apply it. Where it's difficult for you to do today because you're locked in managing your own business, what you'll see is that these tools will help you see through that, help you come up with a future scenario, help you get where you're going. And then the other class that we just launched will help you attack your lock-ins and make it happen down the road in 2022. It's all part of an ongoing long-term trend, and you just got to get into it, and then it'll be like putting your canoe in the river, man. You can just paddle a lot less and you'll go a lot farther.
Yeah, and that's exciting. It's very exciting. We're living in some very exciting times, Adam. I'm happy that we're able to have the perch that we have in order to see the dynamics playing out with the trends. And there's nothing better. I was asked the other day by somebody of kind of what do I enjoy most about what I do, and when you talk to a business owner and they kind of get that light bulb moment, and then they go out and they implement that in their own business and they see that success, and it happens relatively fast, that's just amazingly exciting for them and for us. So with that, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Of course, go and look at our website, sparkpartners.com. And if you have any interest, email me at manny@sparkpartners.com, and I'll give you that promo code for our course. It's the best time of year right now. And for the next month, we're going to be offering this at basically a $500 reduction, basically half off. So with that, Adam, have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll talk to you next week.
You too, Manny. Take care.
Take care.